Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. I hope everyone is in good health and welcome back to our course after the mid semester. Now we come to the second part of the semester. Before we move on to the new topics, we may reflect on what we have discussed so far. If you have any comments or questions or requests, now you may raise your hand or you may just start talking. We may discuss a little bit in review of all we have discussed so far. We have come to the last session, that is the principles on sequence and content and sequencing and format and presentation. No comments or no requests?
May I, Prof?
Sure, Sumra.
Jadi di format and presentation itu, Prof, ada salah satu prinsipalnya yaitu for strand.
Yeah,
nah ini
right.
For strand ada 4, yaitu meaning focus input, language focus learning, meaning focus output, dan tips. Nah, terus di prinsipal lainnya juga itu ada fluency, ada output, ada comprehensible input, dan deliberate learning. Jadi apa bedanya ini, Prof? Kan kurang lebih sama seperti yang di for strand itu ada fluency activities. Nah, sementara di prinsipal lain juga ada nomor 4 itu ada juga fluency. Seperti itu, Prof. Ada juga yang meaning focus input untuk di for strands. Terus prinsipal ketiga juga ada comprehensible input, begitu, Prof. Apa bedanya itu yang for strand sama?
Oke, baik. Saya kira ini pertanyaan yang menarik. For strands itu ada 4 yang diungkap di situ, yang input, output, kemudian ada language development dengan fluency development. Nah, di prinsip yang lain juga ada yang relatif sama dengan konsep yang ada di for strand tersebut. Saya kira itu benar. Jadi penjelasan yang lebih rinci dari masing-masing strand ini ada di prinsip yang lainnya, bisa dilihat. Meskipun secara keseluruhan for strand ini dianggap satu kesatuan ya. Jadi dalam menerapkan prinsip ini, maka harus ada input yang meaningful input itu misalnya mendengar atau membaca teks ya. Jadi kalau banyak membaca itu akan banyak input yang masuk atau banyak mendengar. Jadi kalau prinsip ini digunakan maka dalam pemilihan konten dan dalam penyajiannya format and presentation, maka teks-teks yang dipakai yang sebaiknya itu otentik itu harus dipilih. Meskipun di dalam prinsip yang lainnya itu di comprehensible input itu lebih menekankan kepada jenis-jenis teks yang harus dibaca atau harus didengar. Jadi kalau di comprehensible input itu semua teks bacaan itu harusnya berada pada level yang dikenal dengan istilah instructional level. Karena kalau di atasnya itu berada pada level frustration level namanya. Dilihat dari segi diksi atau leksikal yang ada dalam teks bacaan itu. Semakin banyak kata yang baru bagi siswa, maka akan semakin sulit dijadikan sebagai comprehensible input. Jadi selisih antara apa yang diketahui dengan apa yang baru itu tidak boleh, menurut konsep klasik, tidak boleh lebih dari 1. 1 ini bukan berarti 1 kata ya, tapi tidak boleh lebih dari 1 jenjang di atas kemampuan yang mereka miliki. Itu berarti comprehensible input. Di dalam for strand itu tidak dijelaskan secara rinci mengenai jenis-jenis teks yang harus dibaca. Hanya disebutkan akan semakin bagus kalau banyak input ya, meaningful input tentunya. Biasanya disebutkan di situ minimal input itu adalah teks bacaan, harus banyak membaca dan banyak mendengar. Sebaliknya yang output itu yang productive skill. Jadi harus ada yang dalam konten dan dalam presentation, latihan-latihan yang memang bisa melatih anak untuk memproduksi bahasa, baik dalam bentuk lisan maupun dalam bentuk tulisan. Tetapi kedua hal ini hanya boleh didukung kalau ada yang strand yang ketiga, itu language development. Nah, language development ini dikaitkan dengan butir-butir bahasa, kaidah-kaidah bahasa yang mereka harus kuasai dalam rangka menunjang strand yang dua tadi, input dan output. Fluensi ini adalah akselerasi dari input yang ada itu. Jadi tidak akan mungkin fluensi itu berlanjut atau berkembang kalau language development itu tidak dijalankan ya. Jadi meskipun banyak input, tetapi kalau tidak ada latihan-latihan berkaitan dengan language development, linguistic features, maka akan sulit untuk bisa mencapai profisiensi kelancaran atau fluensi. Jadi ada istilah fluensi, jangan terpengaruh bahwa fluensi itu hanya speaking ya. Jadi semua ada di di skill yang lainnya. Ada juga namanya writing fluency, reading fluency dan seterusnya. Jadi bukan hanya di speaking yang mengenal istilah fluensi. Nah, ini seringkali kita ada ide bahwa yang fluensi itu hanya speaking saja, padahal tidak demikian. Reading juga harus dikembangkan fluensinya. Speaking, writing juga begitu, ada writing fluency. Oke, jadi saya kira itu yang bisa saya jelaskan ya. Sumda ya, juga yang lainnya supaya memahami. Force trend itu banyak biasanya kalau force trend itu sudah diimplementasikan, diaplikasikan, dia cakupannya banyak. Karena seperti tadi ada beberapa prinsip lain yang sebenarnya sudah relevan dengan force trend tersebut. Oke. Kalau masih ada yang lain? Ada komen atau request atau question?
Saya Prof.
Ainun, yes, Ainun. Silakan.
Jadi Prof kan kemarin dijelaskan bahwa dalam penyusunan konten dan sekuensi itu maksimal kita memilih tiga saja prinsip.
Ya,
Nah,
ya.
apakah di format dan presentation juga ada batasan, Sir?
Jadi sebenarnya bukan batasan yang disebutkan oleh para ahli. Jadi prinsip-prinsip ini tidak akan mungkin dalam satu kali pengembangan materi misalnya atau penyusunan kurikulum dan pengembangan materi sekaligus diimplementasikan atau diterapkan. Jadi kalau di content and sequence 8 itu akan diterapkan dalam pengembangan kurikulum atau pengembangan RPS misalnya atau pengembangan materi pembelajaran, itu tidak akan mungkin keseluruhannya secara bersamaan diterapkan. Itu maksudnya, jadi tidak akan mungkin sekaligus. Kalau di format and presentation ada 10 secara bersamaan itu susah untuk diterapkan untuk pengembangan materi. Nah, di buku yang satunya ya di buku Issues in Material Development bab 2 itu ada 7 atau 8 ahli yang mengungkapkan prinsip-prinsip pengembangan materi dengan jumlah prinsip yang berbeda. Ada yang hanya 8, ada 12, ada 14, ada 18 gitu. Kalau kita amati, kita bisa melihat bahwa di antara prinsip yang dikemukakan oleh para ahli itu ada beberapa yang sama. Meskipun pengalimatannya tidak sama, tetapi makna dari kalimat yang diungkap sebagai prinsip itu relatif sama. Maka kita bisa menduga bahwa prinsip-prinsip yang sama itu adalah yang paling mendasar. The most essential principles are those who stated by all the experts. Jadi kalau kedelapan penulis itu mengungkapkan prinsip yang sama, saya kira itu kita bisa menetapkan sebagai prinsip yang paling mendasar. Sementara ada yang prinsip yang satu tidak dikemukakan oleh ahli yang lain. Jadi ada beberapa prinsip yang berbeda antara satu dengan yang lain. Maka itu menjadi pilihan kita mana yang paling cocok untuk kita terapkan dalam pengembangan materi misalnya. Ya, jadi bukan harus 3 ya. Saya meminta 3 itu dengan harapan ketiga-tiganya itu secara sinergi bisa diterapkan bersama-sama. Jadi kalau kedelapan prinsip yang ada di content and sequencing, saya kira sangat sulit untuk bisa kita terapkan secara bersamaan pada satu kesempatan. Oke, saya kira itu Ainun ya.
Thank you, Prof.
Oke, any other fellows?
Mungkin saya, Prof.
Oke, Davira, silakan.
Saya Prof kurang mengerti mengenai deliberate learning.
Oke.
Saya sudah baca, Sir, cuma mungkin Anda penjelasan lebih lengkap.
Baik.
Prof, terima kasih.
Oke, saya kira pertanyaan yang sering muncul karena seringkali ada aspek kebahasaan yang dianggap sebagai aspek yang tidak penting, biasa disebut dengan neglected aspect of language dalam pembelajaran. Deliberate itu maksudnya intentional, sengaja, dengan sengaja, intentional. Kebalikannya itu adalah incidental. Jadi ada incidental learning, ada deliberate learning. Misalnya begini, kalau di dalam kelas kita mengambil satu teks, kemudian kita ingin mengembangkan kemampuan membaca anak. Anggapan kita bahwa kosakata yang ada dalam teks itu, karena mereka akan cari di kamus dan seterusnya untuk bisa memahami bacaan, maka kita berasumsi mereka akan bisa menguasai kata itu dengan membaca teks tersebut. Nah, ini berarti kita beranggapan bahwa pembelajaran kosakata itu bersifat insidental ya. Ya, insidental, kebetulan karena dia membaca, dia cari di kamus, dia tahu artinya, kemudian dia membaca teks, akhirnya bisa memahami teks itu. Anggapan kita kosakata itu menjadi bahagian dari stok kosakata anak. Itu yang disebut insidental. Itu yang tidak bisa kita anut ya, karena kata yang kita pelajari melalui kamus ketika kita membaca, ketika bacaan itu ditutup, maka kata itu juga akan hilang. Tidak akan diingat gitu. Oleh karena itu harus ada namanya deliberate learning. Kosakata yang kita anggap menjadi inti dalam bacaan itu dan kemungkinan besar they are new words to the students, then we need to develop some exercises in order that they can master the words, the vocabulary words. Nah, the exercises, the tasks, and the practices concerning the new vocabulary words is called deliberate learning. Jadi dengan latihan-latihan kita rancang itu dari kosakata yang ada, maka kita sudah memasuki atau kita sudah menerapkan yang namanya deliberate learning. Jadi jangan beranggapan seperti tadi bahwa misalnya saja dalam teks bacaan itu banyak kalimat-kalimat perintah, karena itu adalah procedural teks misalnya. Kita beranggapan bahwa mereka akan menguasai kalimat perintah imperatif karena sudah mempelajari teks prosedural. Itu tidak akan mungkin terjadi. Itu berarti incidental learning. Itu yang kita hindari dengan prinsip ini, deliberate learning. Oleh karena itu, we need to design and develop exercises how to use the imperative or what is the imperative sentences. Oke. Bagaimana, Davira, begitu ya? Itu maksud dari deliberate learning.
Yes, Prof. Thank you so much, Prof.
Ya. Oke, masih ada yang lain? Tidak ada lagi? Oke, baik, kita akan pindah ke bagian kedua dari semester kita ini. Dan kita akan mulai dengan silabus. Dan ini akan lebih banyak kita mau review dan menelaah kurikulum bahasa Inggris yang ada di sistem pendidikan kita. Di sekolah lanjutan maupun di perguruan tinggi. Silabus itu sudah ada dan karena kondisi sekarang ini maka itu berubah ya, silabus yang normal menjadi silabus yang darurat ya. Tapi kita tidak lihat dulu perubahan-perubahan itu, karena kita akan kaji itu dalam rangka memberikan pemahaman atau membuat kita memahami betul kurikulum bahasa Inggris itu, sehingga nanti kalau praktek mengajar kita sudah bisa berkontribusi terhadap pembelajaran di sekolah itu pada saat praktek mengajar. Meskipun nanti pada saat praktek mengajar tetap harus ada guru pamong dan dosen pembimbing yang juga tetap akan menelaah kembali kurikulum ini, karena setiap kali akan ke sekolah misalnya untuk melaksanakan PPL, praktek mengajar itu, maka selalu dikaitkan dengan kurikulum bahasa Inggris yang ada di sekolah yang bersangkutan. Ya, kita akan mulai dengan pembahasan mengenai silabus. Oke. Kita akan mulai dengan what we mean by syllabus, the definition and description of what we mean by syllabus. Just a minute. In some cases, curriculum and syllabus are used alternately for the same purpose, for the same meaning. But in some cases, some experts try to differentiate between the two. But then, for the purpose of our course, we may want to look at why we sometimes say it for the same purpose and sometimes we mean different. Okay, let's see first. Let's see the first slide. Stan explain about the two senses of curriculum. So when we say what curriculum is all about, we have discussed it in the beginning of our course, and we just want to review to refresh our understanding of what curriculum is all about. The substance of a program of studies of educational institutional systems, such as the school curriculum, university curriculum. So that is for the whole school. If you remember, the list of subjects in a school that the students should complete in order that they can graduate from the school. So that is one of the sense of curriculum is. The second one is a course of study or content in a particular subject. So we have the English curriculum. So besides the program study curriculum, we have every subject its own curriculum. the speaking, for example, it has its own curriculum. Okay. So this is what STEM means, that there are two senses of curriculum. The first one is all the list of the subject in one program, or if at the school level, all the subjects in the school that the students should complete before they graduate from the school. And the second sense is only a specific subject within the program. So each subject will have its own curriculum. Here, Stan mentioned about the mathematics curriculum, history curriculum, and similar to our subject, English curriculum. Or even in our program study, there is what we call the introduction to linguistic curriculum, pragmatics curriculum, writing curriculum, and so forth. David Nuna mentions another definition of curriculum. So, curriculum is concerned with making general statements about a language learning. So this is for a subject area. Learning purpose and experience, and the relationship between teachers and learners. So in a curriculum format, then the format will consist of several elements. The first one is about the statement of the purpose, the experience, the learning experience, and the relationship between teachers and learners. So what the teachers are doing and what the learners are going to do. A syllabus is more localized and is based on the counts and records of what actually happens in the classroom level as teacher and student apply a curriculum to their situation. So according to Nunan, a syllabus is more implementative. So what happens in the classroom, the interaction between the teacher and the learners is called what curriculum is what syllabus is all about. Okay. So while curriculum is more general, from the statement of the goal to the learning experience and the design interaction between the learner and the teacher. While syllabus, once again, is what happens in the classroom. It's more specific and in the classroom level. So what is the difference between the syllabus and curriculum? Syllabus is a specification of what takes place in the classroom, while a curriculum provides more general one, like the general statement about the rationale of language learning and language teaching. That is the approach, the assumption about what language is, what language learning is, and what language teaching is. And detailed specification of aims, objectives, and the target learning purposes. So in the curriculum, we already formulated the learning objectives in detail and the implementation of a program. So if it is a English education program, the implementation of it will be based on what we call the curriculum. Now, the relationship between syllabus and materials. So usually the development, the writing of material is based on the syllabus. So language education programs are designed following a syllabus-driven approach. So what type of syllabus will be adapted by a program or a course, then the material will follow that approach, the type of syllabus that we adapt. The syllabus determines what kind of materials will be adopted and in what ways they will be exploited for the classroom teaching. So in a syllabus, usually the developer of a syllabus will identify how the material will be delivered. So usually we call it strategy, or probably they call it methods. Okay. In certain educational contexts, the syllabus even determines how materials should be designed in the first place. Yeah, the syllabus will lead us to how we design the material. Remember that we have discussed in the earlier meetings, in syllabus or in the curriculum, one of the most important elements is the goal. So once we have stated the goal, the objectives, then that statement will lead us to the design, the development of materials, and also the design and development of the evaluation plan, how we are going to assess the achievement of these goals. There are two broad categories of syllabus. The first one is they call it synthetic syllabi and analytic syllabi. This is the plural form of syllabus. They usually say syllabi, but in some other books, you can also have the plural of syllabus by using syllabuses. What is the inflection of S, syllabuses. So you can use either one, syllabi or syllabuses. So synthetic syllabi, a syllabus that selects based on language form. So this is the difference between synthetic and analytic syllabus. Analytic syllabi select the syllabus that select based on a language function. So language function and language form are two different aspects of the language. And if the syllabus is developed based on the form, they call it synthetic syllabus. And if the syllabus is developed based on function, they call it analytic syllabus. Some other aspect says about the same thing, but they call it structural syllabus. So a syllabus that select based on the language features, language form or language features is similar to synthetic syllabi. And functional syllabi based on the function. A syllabus that select based on what the students can do. They usually call it their standard. So they call it the curriculum standard framework. They develop the syllabus based on the function of the language. Okay. Now let's see what we can do when we want to select a type of syllabus, or we want to develop a syllabus for our course. Look at these questions, and then you can try to use this question in order you can select the most appropriate syllabus for you. Who will use the syllabus? This is why we use the needs analysis. Okay, we use the target learners, we ask them, and then we develop the syllabus afterward. So who will use the syllabus? Including the demography. Are they young learners? Are they adult learners? Or are they adolescents, and so forth? Which area of student fluency do you most need to focus on? So once again, the result of the needs analysis will lead us to this, to the answer of these questions. So which areas should be developed? And then what are the required target levels, and will you mention them? This is the objectives formulation. So the statement of the objective will show the target levels. And then how will you organize it? This is the type of syllabus: function, form, theme, topic. Okay. There are different types of ways to organize the content, and that will also show us the type of syllabus that we are adopting. And then how will you organize all this into coherent, communicable whole? So this will show the syllabus, what type of syllabus is it. How will you sequence the items? This is also an indication of the syllabus, the way that we sequence the language item, for example, or the functions, or the topics, for example. And how will you plan for recycling and revision? You remember the what is the principle? How will you plan for recycling and revision? Recycling means that the same topic might be reviewed and might be repeated again in some other time at the later phase of the curriculum implementation. Okay. And then about revision, once you have apply or implement the curriculum in your class, and then you may have a lot of information, and that will help you how to revise which part of the curriculum you are going to revise based on the information that you have selected or you have recorded during the implementation of the curriculum or the syllabus. Now let's see in brief the type of syllabus. The first one is grammatical syllabus. It may also be called structural syllabus. The syllabus input is selected and graded according to grammatical notions of simplicity to complexity. The syllabuses introduce one item at a time and require mastery on that item before moving on to the next item. We may have already understand about the language items, but then the next consideration is how complex the items are. We have to start from the simple one to the more complex one. So once again, there might have a lot of studies about complexity of the language items, the language features, or the grammar. So the simple one will come first. That is what we call the gradation. We start from the simple one and move on to the harder, more complex one. So this is about the grammatical syllabus or structural syllabus. Next, lexical syllabus. You know lexical meaning words, vocabulary words. So lexical syllabuses identify or target vocabulary to be taught normally arranged according to the level, such as the first 500, the second 500, the third 1500, and the fourth 2,000 words. So the syllabus may be arranged or sequenced according to the level of the words. And the level words might be differentiated into 3 levels. They call it 3 tiers of vocabulary words. The tier 1, the one which is most frequently occur in our daily life. We use it very, very often. And also when we read text, they will occur most frequently in the text. For example, the function words. What is and the, and so forth. Okay. That is tier 1. Tier 2 words are high frequency words and found across a variety of domains. So there are, for example, a list of frequency words on the internet. You can check it, and there are different types of lists. For example, the 1,000 most frequently words in our daily life. So you'll have that list, and then you'll base your syllabus on that list. Or if you want to move on to a higher level of vocabulary words, you may want to move on to 200 most frequently words. Okay. They call it tier 2, and those words may be found in different type of text or passages. So maybe in newspaper, news report, or in a textbook, a science textbook, and so forth. So those words are frequently found in different type of text. They call it a variety of domains. Tier 3 words are words whose frequency use is quite low and often limited to specific domains. So usually the tier 3 are only found in a very specific domain. For example, words related to law, for example, word related to novels, for example. So they occur in such specific domain, and usually it doesn't become our productive vocabulary. We may recognize the word and understand the meaning from the context, but we rarely use it in our productive skill in speaking or in writing. So they call it tier 3 words. And usually the first one and the second one will be the most frequently used in lexical syllabus. Okay, next, this is the top 100 words. This is the most of them are function words to that, but there are also content words like sad, sound, people, write. This is the 100 most frequently found in any kind of text. Okay. Once again, most of them are function words. Okay. Okay, so far, if you have any comments or questions, you may raise your hand.
Me, Prof.
Okay, silakan.
Thank you for the opportunity. So, based on your explanation that there are a synthetic syllabi and analytic syllabi,
yeah. And
my question is, what is the appropriate syllabi for if we want to teach ESP learners, sir?
Okay, you have to consider after we discuss all the type of syllabus. We have come to, there are still several types of syllabus. We just discussed how many? 3. Grammatical syllabus and lexical syllabus. There are still a lot of, there are still some type of syllabus. When we go back to the 2 broad classification category, that is the synthetic and analytic syllabus, then for English, for specific purposes, will not depend on exclusively any of the 2. Okay? It cannot be exclusively synthetic, like grammatical syllabus, neither exclusively analytic, like functional syllabus. When you are dealing with what is ESP, you may want to mix them. You have a combination of several syllabus. First one, you may want to adapt the lexical syllabus first, because in ESP, there are typically specific words for the subject area. So one of the syllabus that you may adopt is the lexical syllabus. Try to identify all the specific vocabulary words in that field, in that area, and then you try to put it into a lexical syllabus. But then, even though it is ESP, an ESP course, you need also the function. To function well, in order you can communicate, you have to understand about the language function. So how to give ideas, how to agree to someone's ideas. So you have also to understand not only the lexical, but also the functional syllabus. So probably, as many experts mentioned currently, combination of several syllabus might be appropriate. Okay. So that could be the answer to your questions. We cannot exclusively use one of the syllabus available to us. Okay, so let's see once again. We have talked about the lexical syllabus and grammatical syllabus. Now we come to what they call it the skill syllabus. The skill syllabuses are organized around the different underlying abilities that are involved in using a language for purposes such as reading, writing, listening, and speaking. So skill syllabus, as we understand, there are 4 macro skills in language: speaking, listening, reading, and writing. And the syllabus might be developed based on the skills. And then another form, another type is functional notional syllabus. Or functional notional syllabus, the input is selected and graded according to the communicative functions. So once again, as the name says here, functional syllabus, that means that the selection of the language items will be based on the communicative functions such as requesting, complaining, suggesting, agreeing, thanking, and different type of language function. So we consider the language learner need to perform at the end of the language program. And when they perform the language, they will use this type of function. How to argue, for example, how to persuade, but then how to complain. Okay, so they call it functional notional syllabus. There is another one, they call it content syllabus. So in content syllabus, the content of language learning might be defined in terms of situation, topics, themes, and other academic or school subjects. So in this type of syllabus, probably the situation will be the topic there. For example, when you say at the bank, when you say at the bank, that's the situation, then you will develop language related to what happens in the activities in the bank. If you want to open a new account, for example. So what kind of language are needed when you are dealing with the bank situation? So they call it at the bank, for example. And this is what they call content syllabus. It is different when the language might be different when you say at the restaurant, okay? So the content of the situation that you take it as a topic, then will lead you to what type of content should be in that situation. So at the restaurant, at the post office, at the bus station, and so forth. So that will lead you to the selection of content, of course. They call it content syllabus. And then next one is task-based syllabus. Task-based syllabuses are more concerned with the classroom processes which stimulate learning. So usually when you hear the task, it is different from exercises. Okay, so exercises usually deal with the language items, while tests dealing to the process of producing the language later on. So the process is more important, and by the process, the students are expected to be able to perform some type of language. Okay. The syllabuses consist of a list of specification of the tests and activities that the learner will engage in a class in the target language. So they will usually use the target language to perform specific types that has been designed by the teacher, and then finally they are expected to be able to perform certain type of tasks. They call it task-based syllabus. Okay, now let's see this short example, brief example. Take a look at number 1, number 2A to B, number 3, number 5, number 4, and number 6. There are 6 types sample of syllabus. Take a look at the first one, number 1. What type of syllabus is that? Simple past, irregular verbs, the passive, formation of adverbs, type 3 conditionals, gerund, and infinitives. So what type of syllabus is this? Based on the type of syllabus that we have discussed so far.
Grammatical.
Grammatical syllabus, that's right, or structural syllabus. So once again, in a grammatical syllabus, the syllabus is based on the grammar, the language forms, or the language features. Okay, now let's see number 2. Making suggestion, asking for direction, giving advice, introducing self, location, duration, ability. So what type of syllabus is this likely to be?
Language
Functional
syllabus.
Yeah, functional syllabus, right. So this belongs to functional syllabus. Right, the function of language, how to make suggestion, how to to give advice and so forth. Next, number 3, take a look. In the restaurant, at the hotel, in the post office, at a garage. What kind of situation is this? Syllabus is this?
Content syllabus, sir.
Content syllabus, okay.
Content.
Syllabus. So if you look at the topic here, in the restaurant, the language items that the students will practice will relate to activities in a restaurant. So the content of this topic will be specifically address the activity in a restaurant. So they call it content syllabus. Sometimes some aspects say this as situational syllabus. They call it situational syllabus. Okay. Now let's see number 4. Making notes from a talk, reading for information, using a dictionary, writing an exam answer. So what types of syllabus is this?
Skill syllabus.
Skill syllabus, that's correct. Good, so look at this, the skills. When you develop your skill to use the dictionary, how you are going to find entries, for example, how to identify the word class in a dictionary, how you order words alphabetically, for example. So that is a kind of skill for using dictionary. Okay, good. Now look at number 5. Space travel, intelligence test, smoking, the weather. To which syllabus does this number 5 belong? Anyone? Anyone who wants to answer? I beg your pardon?
Lexical, sir.
I'm not clear about what you are saying. Can you say it more slowly?
lexical syllabus, sir?
Not really. Not really. This, okay, when you say lexical syllabus, there might be some specific vocabulary words in each of the topic. So when you are dealing with text in space travel, for example, and then you'll have some specific vocabulary words in that area. Okay. You will understand more about the content of this talk about this text. Okay. So this can be a content syllabus. When you emphasize the vocabulary words, that will be what is lexical syllabus. Yeah, you are right in that sense that the emphasis will be on vocabulary, but the vocabulary based on the topic that very specified has been specified. Okay, that can be either content or combination of both content and lexical. How about the last one? Take a look at the last one, number 6.
Perhaps,
Task-based.
yeah.
Task-based syllabi.
Okay, can you say it again?
Task-based syllabi.
Task-based learning, yes. Good. Yeah, this says test interviews. So if you, for example, if you in that syllabus, you try to ask the students to work in pair, or probably you equip them with some kind of interview questions, and then they have to interview their parents, so that becomes tasks. Okay, so we call it task-based syllabus. Good. Okay. Any questions about? I believe that once you see the content of a textbook, for example, when you look at a textbook, and then you see the table of contents, then you can identify whether it belongs to either one of these or combination of several of these type of syllabi. Any comments? Okay. Current trends in syllabus design. So since it's quite difficult to use exclusively one syllabus, one type of syllabus, then the more appropriate one, the more possible one is the combination of several of these syllabus. The coexistence of the old and the new. When you say the old syllabus, the very first one is the grammatical syllabus. Okay. And then the next one is the lexical syllabus. They call it the old ones, but then the new one, for example, the communicative syllabus, task-based syllabus, they call it the new ones. And then the emphasis on learning process. When you are talking about the learning process in a syllabus, for example, then even though it is a grammatical syllabus, but the process may become a task-based, okay? Actually, the syllabus mentions about the grammatical item in that point of time in the syllabus, but then the way that the students will acquire the language item, the grammar, the process applies the task-based syllabus. Okay, so that means that it's a combination of two. Okay. And then the emergence of the multi-syllabus. That is the combination of two or more syllabus available. So they usually call it eclectic. If you already you have already taken the method, TEFL method, there is a method called eclectic. Anyone who knows about this eclectic method if you already take the TEFL method or TEFL methodology. What does it mean, eclectic? My neighbor is renovate his house. Sorry. Okay, once again, eclectic. What does it mean to you? You also have it this term in English language teaching methodology, or TEFL method.
May I, Prof?
Sure.
Based on what I have understood about eclectic, jadi yang membuat silabus itu menggabungkan dari beberapa sumber, Prof.
Ya, menggabungkan dari beberapa sumber. Cara penggabungannya seperti apa? Jadi sama kalau memilih metode, ada juga eclectic method. Memang menggabungkan beberapa, tapi yang penting itu cara menggabungnya seperti apa. How you are going to use one syllabus and then you use the other one and then use another one again. Oke, bagaimana bisa dijawab? Okay, eclectic. So that's correct that the combination of several syllabus with we choose several, and then what happens when we choose several of the syllabus that we know, we have to take a look at the strength of the syllabus, okay? And then we try to take the strength, because it's probably by using that, we can achieve the goal that we have stated before. So we are looking at the strength of each of the syllabus, and then we try to adapt the strength into our syllabus. The same as method. There are different type of methods in teaching English, but then you try to combine several of them. The way that you combine them is that taking the advantages of each of the method, and then you try to apply the method in that sense, in the advantageous way. So you have the term eclectic method. Here, eclectic syllabus, meaning that we try to look at the advantages of each of the syllabus available, and then we use that, we apply that in our syllabus development. Okay, is it clear? So why we call it eclectic? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Prof.
Yeah. Okay, now let's see when we develop the syllabus, what is the hype? Take a look at the statement here. What is important in brief, then we have to consider, or we have to take into account some of the following statement. Okay. When you're using the multi-syllabus approach, then you have to carefully structure. So just now we mentioned about when you use the grammatical syllabus, you have selected what kind of language items that you are going to include in your syllabus. But then when you are developing the exercises, maybe you want to do not only, you want to design not only exercise, but also tasks. So you try to consider the test syllabus, because you want the process to be more engaging Instead of only drilling the students about the grammar, then you want them to do something, to do some kind of activities, and that's what we call the tasks. So that means that you already combine two of them, grammatical and task-based. Okay. So the carefully structured the multi-syllabus approach. And then the next one is you have to consider systematic development of the core skills. So we are always concerned about the development of the listening, speaking, reading, and writing, and then how we are going to develop them all together. Okay. When we adapt the language acquisition theory, we will say that listening will be the first one. The students should be accustomed to listening, and by listening, they will understand what they hear. For example, when you're using total physical response, the student will listen to you and then watch the action that you are doing, and they will understand the meaning of the statement that you make. But they are not able to produce the language yet. They are not able to speak it yet. This is based on the theory of language acquisition. So the baby understand what they hear. The babies understand what they hear long before they can speak. So they adapt that kind of theory. So this means that how you are going to develop the first skills. It is impossible to ask them to write if they are not accustomed to reading yet. So reading should come first before they are writing. So let them see the words, and then they say out loud the words, and then they copy the words, they write the words. So that means that the order is writing comes later. Okay, reading comes earlier. So that is what we call the systematic development of this first skill. Next, emphasis on pronunciation, study skill, and vocabulary learning. Okay, I think the early stage of language acquisition is the pronunciation and vocabulary learning. Understanding of the names of things around us is the first step in acquiring the language. So vocabulary is very important. And once again, vocabulary cannot be mastered by incidental learning. It should be deliberate learning. They will have a kind of rehearsal, repeating the words again and again. And then if they can see the object, then they can understand the meaning. But then if not, then they have to go through some kind of step, whether asking the teacher, asking the fellow students, or looking it up in the dictionary, and so on. Different type of activities in order they can understand the meaning. But once again, pronunciation is very important. And right now, because of the online learning, usually pronunciation is very difficult to practice when the students are online. Of course, the teacher can try to manage that when they design how the student will be drilled in pronunciation, for example. It should be carefully designed. Okay, and the next one, authentic and semi-authentic reading and listening practice. So when you select the material that the students will read, or the student will listen, try to find out some authentic material. For example, news from the internet. So news item that is authentic, okay? Because the news item is not intended for language learning actually, but we take it as reading text, for example, and that is what we call the authentic material. Similarly, when you want them to practice listening, then you may want to take some postcast or news item read by the news reporter, for example. So you have that kind of reports or news reading, but then they listen to the recording, for example, and we call it authentic material. Once again, the news that is read by the reporter is not intended for language learning, actually. So that's why we call it authentic material. And then language for intermediate communication. So when you select the type of language expressions that you want to include in your syllabus, you have to be able to identify and justify which one will come first. And one of the consideration is that the one that will probably used by the learners will come first. So when they communicate one another, and then they have to learn that. That means that will become the priority in our syllabus. Yeah, when you look at the syllabus for junior secondary school, the first one is greeting. So when you want to speak English, the first one is greeting. Good morning, good afternoon, hi, hello. The next one, thorough communicative practice of grammatical structure. It is important to underline the concept of rehearsing or drilling. So one grammar point may be repeated several times in our exercise. So not only one type of exercise, and then we expect that the student will already master the language item. So should be repeatedly the students done that. There is a principle in learning, what they call the time on tasks. There is also in our principle in the format and presentation. Time on task meaning how frequently, how often the students and how many times the student will deal with the same language items in the book, in the syllabus. Maybe this week they will address the one of the language item, but next 2 weeks the language item appear again, and then they will have some other type of exercises for the language item. So that means what we call the intensity and the frequency of the exercises for the same language items. Sorry for the noise. The next one will be the coverage of all the 4 skills. Of course, this type of hype is not considered when you are dealing with, of course, in speaking, for example. So in speaking, of course, the emphasis will be in speaking, even though you may also read. So before, when you are assigned to speak, of course, there might be some kind of reading resources, reading text that become resources for you to have some kind of information about the topic they are going to speak about. Reading is also there, but it's not the emphasis, of course. Next, comprehensive coverage of the English 10 system. Usually in any syllabus right now, the coverage of tenses will start from the most commonly used, the most frequently used in our daily activity. So it is not likely that you will use, for example, the most extreme tenses. What is the most extreme tenses? the future perfect tense, for example, it may be used by the learners, but it's probably rarely, it's very seldom used. I will have finished the report by 9 o'clock tomorrow, for example. That is the future perfect tense. Okay, I will have finished writing the report by 9 o'clock tomorrow. And this type of tenses might be become the bottom priority, not the top priority, of course. Even though it says comprehensive coverage, that meaning that all tenses should be covered, but then when you do the gradation, the sequencing, of course, you know which one will come first and which one will have more intense exercises and practices, of course, in comparison to the other tenses. Okay, do you have any comments on this? Okay. Other hype here, including the proven multi-syllabus approach. When you look at the textbook written by large companies like Oxford University Press or Cambridge University Press, they also produce textbook for secondary school. When you look at the textbook, you may see that they use the multi-syllabus approach. Okay. The next one is careful pacing. Another consideration is careful pacing. How fast one item should be learned, and then we can move on to the next one. In a grammatical syllabus, it says that before one item is mastered, then we cannot move on to the next one. So one item should be mastered first, and then we move on to the next item. So we'll consider how fast this item will be learned, and then you can move on to the next item. That is pacing. Allowance for different learning style and teaching situation. This is another consideration. Variety of exercises. In order, we can accommodate the different style of the students in learning, their preference in learning. So there might be exercises which present a lot of pictures or images that will accommodate those who are visual. But there are also exercises which require physical movement, and that will accommodate the kinesthetic students, the students who prefer to learn by moving around. Okay, okay, so this means that the syllabus and the material that we develop later on should consider about the learning style and also the teaching situation. Authentic reading and listening material, we have mentioned just now. Motivating range of up-to-date topics. Yeah, of course, selection of topics may be based on the needs assessment, the most interesting topic for the students. So what types of topic they want to discuss in their English lesson, for example. When we have that from the needs analysis, then we include those topics. But then we should also consider what kind of topics that will motivate them. If the issue right now is about the, for example, the coronavirus, maybe the topic will be interesting the students when we are talking about the most current issue in our society. That is the other consideration. Combination of solo language work with real life skills. So in which area the student might work later on when they graduate, for example, or what kind of language that they may use in order they can survive for their living. So that is the relationship between the language and the life skills. Okay. Should be a combination between the language that they are going to learn, to practice and do exercise in the classroom, and the life skills. While they are developing the language skill, they will also develop their life skills. Builds on and expands student existing knowledge, encourages learner independence and develop fluency, accuracy, and confidence. When you are providing them with the text to be read by them, and then you have to consider about their background knowledge. So the understanding of the text that they are reading or the text that they are listening to will very largely depend on the background knowledge they have. The better their background knowledge, the easier they will understand the text they are reading or the text they are listening to. So consider the background knowledge they have. But then we also encourage their independence. So asking them, require them, or assign them to read resources relevant to the topic that we are going to discuss is very important. So they will expand their background knowledge while they try to build up their independency in learning or autonomy in learning. We usually call it, we expect them, the learner, to be independent learners or autonomous learner. They are willing to look for material in order that they can understand better when they are assigned to do some kind of tasks. The more independent the learner will, the more likely that they will learn faster and better in the classroom. Okay, so let's see what is the discussion today about the syllabus. If you have any comments or questions. Any questions or comments so far?
Me, Prof, may I?
Okay, sure. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, Prof, thank you for the opportunity. I have a question again. It's about about authentic materials in our syllabus.
Yeah.
And my question is, how important these authentic materials that we have to find in our syllabus?
Okay. It has been studied, reported by some research studies that authentic materials are more effective than non-authentic material. The students' interest may be triggered by the authentic materials. Authentic materials are materials which are not designed and developed for the purpose of language learning. So a text or reading passage taken from a newspaper, for example, is called authentic material. Or a fragment or a segment of a movie is cut off and then you take it into the classroom, and that becomes an authentic material. So it's very important when you have developed the syllabus and then you move on to content and sequencing and format of presentation, selecting the material. Please consider this using authentic materials. Some of the books also take some authentic material. For example, they pick up some conversation on WhatsApp group, for example, picking up and then put it into the material in our syllabus. And that is the what we call the authentic materials. Okay. And that might be more interesting. According to some research claim, authentic material is more interesting for the students. Okay, that's the answer, Firman side.
Okay, Prof. Thank you.
Sure. I believe I also upload a book entitled Designing Authenticity in Language Learning. There is a book entitled Designing Authenticity in Language Learning, if I'm not mistaken. I have uploaded in the SAM-OK, if I'm not mistaken. You can take a look at that. For example, there is a chapter like using film in language learning. Yeah? So developing material based on film, materials based on literary works, for example. So they are taking authentic materials and then designing activities, tests, exercises based on that authentic material. Okay. Any other questions? If no, then I hope you can read the book, Nation and McAllister. But in that book about syllabus, they call it negotiated syllabus. Okay. Di dalam buku wajib kita ada bab 8 atau 9. They call it negotiated syllabus. So this is yang kita bahas tadi itu multi-syllabus approach or combination of several syllabus. So we developed that. What it means negotiated syllabus, a syllabus based on the needs assessment, for example, is a negotiated syllabus. You try to consider all what the students want, and then that becomes an indication of negotiated syllabus, including combination of several other type of syllabus. Okay, before we dismiss this class, if you have comment or questions. No? Okay. I believe that we will dismiss the class for the class today. And then if you see the material in the SAM-OK, I have uploaded the curriculum SMP. Okay. Curriculum Bahasa Inggris SMP. Please take a look and then read the curriculum, review that, and make some notes. And we will discuss that next week. From next week on, we will review and examine the curriculum SMP, SMA, dan SMK in the expectation that when you are doing the teaching practicum, PPL, you are accustomed to those type of curriculum. Okay, thank you very much for your attention, all of you, and take care of health while working on the assignments of your lecturers. Also, always take care of your health. Thank you very much. I'll see you again next week, inshallah. I will end the meeting for all of us. Fastabikul khairat. Billahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Prof.
Good day.
Thank you. So I'll end the meeting right now.